All right, thanks for joining me today. This is another one of our continuing interviews with local business owners that the Center for Business Economic Research here at LCUS is conducting to talk about the pandemic and how it affected our local businesses, the struggles they went through, the lessons they learned. Again, before we start, I want to remind everyone that any opinions offered here are mine alone and not the university's. With that said, I'd like to introduce and welcome Andrew Nations, the co-founder and owner of Great Raft Brewing. And so before we start talking about the pandemic, I thought I'd just let you tell us a little bit about Great Raft, how long you've been around, what you do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me on to kind of share our kind of unique position in the world as it relates to COVID and the eventful year of 2020 and actually into 2021. So my name is Andrew. I'm with Great Raft Brewing. So we're a production brewery here in North Louisiana in Shreveport, and we package beer in kegs and cans that go out throughout the entire state of Louisiana, all of Arkansas, Jackson, Mississippi, and the DFW market over in Texas, as well as East Texas. So we're almost 9 years old. We've been right here in kind of the Fairfield area, almost downtown Shreveport, just doing a variety of stuff, lagers, hazy IPAs, sour beers, Belgian, stuff like that. We have an on-site tasting room that we've been doing since day one. So we kind of have a unique position as being a manufacturer of a food product, a beverage, and also having a public space as well. So we're unique. We unlike anybody else, other folks, we have unique challenges, and COVID certainly took us off guard. We can plan for a lot of things. We get insurance for a lot of things, but I don't think anyone saw the year 2020 was anyone saw it coming. So we came out of alive, and we're just happy to be able to continue brewing great beer for the Gulf region.
All right, so it's an interesting point that you make, that you're both a manufacturer and you have a public tasting room. So if I focus too much on one side and ignore the other, please let me know, because a lot of times what people are going to see is that public facing that, oh, the tasting room's closed, whereas I don't know if that caused more problems or the manufacturing side caused more problems. But let's start. We had the shutdown order from the governor. Did you have any warning or inkling that was going to come, and were you able to prepare at all for that, or is it all of a sudden, oh no, we're shut down and we have all this beer sitting here that we're brewing, and what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, so we I think we, to a certain degree, we saw it coming. Obviously not to the scale and as the duration, the length of the shutdown. We did not see that coming. But for us, I think that, forget what day it was. I think it was about a week before the full shutdown. But we had a beer dinner planned here with the folks from the Revernier and Everyman and King Distillery. Just an incredible menu with the talented folks there, beer pairings, the whole nine. And we were just on the fence about, do we move forward with it? This COVID thing seems to be all over the news. It seems to be happening very fast. It's a very dynamic situation. We had some folks call and ask for refunds, and kind of put us in a situation where we had to at least pump the brakes on that event and think what was best for not only our employees, but for certainly our customers. So we made the decision to cancel the beer dinner, and then a few days later, maybe a week later, we had the full shutdown. So just very dynamic situation. Just nothing like you don't know what you don't know. So there's so many people that were just kind of clueless about which direction you were going. We're getting all this type of information from the news, but we took it pretty seriously very quickly. So we made some decisions internally about what was best, again, for our customers, for our employees, and for the beer. So shut down the tasting room immediately, and really made the decision very quickly, in fact, to get all of our beer back from distributors. So I think some of our distributors were a little surprised at how quickly we made this decision, but our logic was fairly simple. If we react now and essentially buy back what's called $100,000 worth of draft beer, we could move that back to a bright beer tank, a finishing vessel, and put that in packaged products and still have an outlet in terms of grocery stores, convenience stores, things like that. So we made that decision very, very quickly. It was probably early April to buy all that beer back that was already been sold to our distributors to sit in kegs and cold storage throughout the South, get it back to Shreveport, and put that in a can. That was probably the most probably stressful. It's on paper it doesn't make sense, but we're in partnership with our distributors. We live and die by the 3-tier system, and they support us every day of the week. So we had to make some decisions about how do we help them, because they're in a lot of trouble too, sitting on literally millions of dollars worth of inventory.
So again, another interesting point you mentioned there. I think that a lot of people think, oh, we had this shutdown order, and they think too much like me in an office, that, oh, I turn my computer off and all the programs stop, and then when I have to reopen, I can just come in, power the computer on. You're talking about brewing beer that I don't know, a couple days, week in advance, that you have to have things in the tank and have to have that planned out. You have to have the inventory coming in to brew it. What kind of hassle or difficulties does it cause you to all of a sudden have, oh, by the way, we're shutting down? And especially as you said that a lot of your product goes out in kegs, and now the restaurants are closed as well, so those kegs aren't going to be selling. Talk a little bit about the hassle of all of a sudden having a shutdown imposed on you.
Sure. So just to give you some context and some scale in terms of what size and duration and things like that. So we typically keep about a month's supply of malt on hand, and we typically brew a 3-tank week, what we call 3-tank week. So that's 9 20-barrel turns between 3 brewers, and each turn is an 8-hour day. So what we call, it takes about a day to brew a batch, and about 2 or 3 days to fill an entire 60-barrel tank. So what we call grain to glass, it depends on the beer. Some beers we can get out about 20, 30 days, and other beers like Southern Draw, some of the lagers, and definitely some of the Belgian beers, they take anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks and even longer. So, when the pandemic hit, we shut down, we're still, a necessary business and stayed open with packaging and everything. But we had basically a cellar full of beer that we really didn't have a home for. And that's in addition to all the beer we bought back from our distributors. So the first thing we immediately do is just pump the brakes on any kind of brewing beer, and really looked at our packaging plan, how we're going to package this beer, and 100% cans. So we went from a typical, what we call split, would be 500 cases of commotion. Well, with no draft, that looks about 700, 800 cases of commotion. That's a 9 or 10 hour day of doing just cans. So in terms of raw materials and raw goods, we were pretty stocked up, but obviously we knew things were about to get real very fast. So we immediately pumped the brakes on any brewing process on the cold side of brewing, and focused on packaging and fermentation.
All right, so one of the things I think people have learned about during pandemic is the just-in-time inventory, and especially the thinness of a lot of our supply lines that I've read that they're with not just you, but all the other brewers in the country, and also, soft drinks, that most soft drinks are sold in kegs or in the little fountain box things that, McDonald's uses. With those restaurants shut down, everybody's looking for cans to package their product. And I heard there was a extreme shortage of cans. Did you run into that issue? Was it troubling hard to get cans to package this product?
Yeah, absolutely. And I still don't think we're out of the woods on that front. For us, we were cutting it pretty close on some of our more popular brands like 318 and Commotion, really having the can line ready to go and waiting for a truck from Dallas to hit the dock, unload them, and fire the canning line up and off to the races. Luckily, we didn't have a too big concern, a shortage of aluminum. We were, typically they tell us to be about 8 weeks ahead of time, 2 months, and now they're telling us to be about 6 months planning. So there's still, aluminum is very much still a very big concern of ours. So we're, over ordering and having plenty of product, and we have physical space for the cans for sure. We just need to make sure that we have enough for all the brands that we do. So we survived, but yeah, it's still very much a real thing, the aluminum shortage.
All right, so you also had product that you didn't can before the pandemic. So I know that your industry is pretty heavily regulated. What kind of problems did it put that if you wanted to put beer that wasn't in a can, now to put it in a can to get out to the public? Did you run into issues with that? I think I read during one of the shutdowns that there's like one guy in the ATF that has to approve like all can labels. And so if this is happening a lot, I can imagine that job could be overwhelming.
Yeah, well, it keeps it consistent in terms of label approval. So I think we had a couple labels in the pipeline. We get way ahead of that to getting federally approved labels before they cross state lines. State stuff is a little quicker, but that's the truth. There actually is one guy that looks at every beer label in America and makes sure it has the right ABV statements, the artwork's not offensive, and things like that. Lucky that wasn't an issue for us, but it's still kind of funny that that rumor is definitely true.
All right, so I'm going to switch a little bit to the front of the house, the public side with the tasting room. What's it like not with all of a sudden the tasting room being shut down? For anyone listening, I go to their brewery quite a bit. I loved going into the tasting room. That it's one of those places you can walk into, and I feel like I'm going to run into 4 or 5 people I know that I didn't even know we're going to be there. So I will confess, I really missed the tasting room during the pandemic. That that's one of those social aspects that disappeared. What's it like as a owner where people are coming in and buying your product to all of a sudden not have them there?
Well, sure. I think that the most obvious is from a revenue standpoint. The volume of beer that we sell through a tasting room is not a massive number, but in terms of revenue, it definitely helps. We see a lot of friendly faces every week. So from the revenue, we're talking about 10 to 15% of our revenue got cut off overnight. So first and foremost, that was a huge hit. But I think secondly, it was kind of mentally kind of depressing. You see these people that regulars, you see new faces, folks that come over from Texas. It was fairly miserable. I mean, the energy in this room that I'm sitting in now is our tasting room. The energy in this room around 4 to 5 on Friday afternoon, I wouldn't trade for anything. We've got folks that are looking forward to maybe a weekend. We've got the production staff that just finished canning commotion. We got a new beer release. We've got production employees meeting out with tasting room employees that they haven't seen in a week. So the energy in the tasting room is always great for every employee. So that part of it was pretty terrible. We basically started over with some new staff because we couldn't promise employment. We just didn't have anything for them to do because we literally had to shut down overnight. That said, though, our tasting room staff did an incredible job of pivoting and really adopting this to-go option. So we have a brand new menu. We integrated software, had a very specific way of no contact in terms of transactions, and Shreveport was unbelievable. In April and May, our to-go business was incredible. Not only was the business incredible, but in terms of how they support us, but the tips were crazy. We had people stopping by afterward to get a 6-pack and tipping $20 on a $10 6-pack. I mean, the tips were so large that our tasting staff made the decision to start including the production staff in some of these tips. These folks were incredibly helpful. It kept us in business. Those are pretty lean months, but Shreveport stepped up in a huge way.
That's got to feel nice. I mean, that's got to say that you're not just making beer. You're creating a nice community place that we value and that people want to see survive. So that's got to be pretty rewarding.
It was incredible. Bob stepped up, Mark stepped up. The whole staff was kind of had to do something different than what they were hired to do, and sequence all these orders and get these case trays ready. It was unique, but it definitely kept spirits high during those really, really lean months.
All right, so let's switch gears just a little bit. There's the saying, out of every crisis comes opportunities. So what are the opportunities, or what did you learn about your business that you don't think you would have learned without being forced to because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think for us, we, one thing I think we learned is when we acted quickly to get all that draft beer back and to come up with a game plan for to-go, I think all those things turned out to be the right decision. But the situation was very dynamic. The governor was doing every other week conference calls, and the mayor to me had great communication on social media, and it was such a dynamic year that we never thought it would last that long, but it was so dynamic that we were having almost daily meetings about how to take advantage of some of these EIDLs and these PPP loans, and how do we keep the lights on? How do we keep our employees paid? How do we keep them busy? But I think my point is, for us, it was we learned that acting fast is certainly important, but the opportunity to course correct is never lost, and that's something that we evaluated, like I said, almost on a daily basis. I would say, in addition to that, one of the things that I think we did well is over communicate to our team, to our small investor group, to our employees, and a lot of that messaging sometimes wasn't very clear because we simply didn't know. But we were over communicating the status and how we were pivoting, and the can shortage and making payroll and things like that. We always try to over communicate, and that's something that we definitely had to do in 2020.
All right, so you mentioned the loans and the assistance from the government. As somebody who didn't partake in that, how would you describe the system? Was it easy to use? Was it difficult? Because we've heard mixed stories that that people complain that it didn't go to the businesses it's supposed to help, and others saying, oh, if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't survive. So, what kind of role did that play for you guys?
Sure, we're definitely in the camp of the latter. Both rounds of PPP and the idea were huge for us, and I give all the credit to our business director Garrett Johnson for staying informed with that communication on the federal level was a bit complex and challenging and not always consistent. So Garrett was literally monitoring these programs on a daily basis, and how do we file for this, and what type of documentation do you need? Luckily, Garrett is great with all the above. With his record keeping and literally keeping our lights on. So again, Garrett Johnson, our business director, did the vast majority of that. And I think that the biggest was, not knowing when, if it would be forgiven and how, what the terms would be. So from our standpoint, we treated those things like a credit card that would at some point would have to be, repaid. But we took advantage of all of them. They're huge. They're a big part of, again, those lean months and keeping us in business.
All right, so let's talk a little bit then now about the reopening that you're, so you guys were kind of in that unique position that as we started reopening things, you weren't allowed to reopen because you were, I think, technically classified in that bar category. So that, that I don't remember correctly, but didn't we have to get to a certain level of positivity before the governor would let you have like 25% reopening? And what's it like seeing other businesses be able to reopen and you're kind of stuck in this limbo of, can we reopen or can't we reopen?
Sure. Well, we had multiple conversations with the commissioner at the ATC, and sometimes they treat us like a bar, and sometimes they treat us like a restaurant. And breweries, manufacturing breweries that aren't traditional brew pubs, we're very much in this gray area. They're in these communications you see from the governor. They don't really call us out specifically with language specific to manufacturing breweries. So this is every press release the governor we would hope would say something specifically. But we kind of took that to our advantage, and we're kind of looking around to see what other businesses were doing, and knowing our time to open would if we chose to do so at that time, given a lot of variables. We kind of watch to see what they're doing, see what works best for them. So it was frustrating to see folks open, but a lot of these restaurants and stuff, those are our customers. We've seen a lot of beer out the door, so it was really good to see some draft beer starting to be a thing again after so many months where it's just cans. And we have personal relationships with the vast majority of our accounts, so it was good to see those folks get back in business and having employees come back to work. So while it was frustrating to not open, we always had fairly busy workload with canning beer and supporting the restaurants as they come back online.
All right, can you mention any of the changes you've put in the tasting room because of pandemic? I know, that you do offer some food now, which you hadn't in the past, or at least, and the changes you've put in, do you think they're changes that you're going to keep going forward?
We haven't changed a ton. It still looks and feels like a very welcoming environment to come try some beer, talk to some friendly faces. Most of our staff in the tasting room is new these days. We've got a lot of PPP on site. We've got a lot of hand sanitizing stations, a lot of signage up because we're still very much in the middle of this thing. The food aspect, and I say food, it's more just snacks and stuff,
Right.
was kind of a way to get us open sooner than as a restaurant. We're classified as a restaurant to get us open. So I think that will stay to some degree. Folks are really liking the pretzels, and they like to. That part's not going away. Most of our hours are still the same. We did kind of amp up our to-go menu and how to order, and really encouraging that. I don't see that going away anytime soon. But those are the biggest parts. This room is something we worked hard to create as its brand within itself. So again, it was pretty tough to be as close as long as we were from a variety of standpoints. But we're here, and we're back, and it's good. It's no complaints on our end.
All right. How about on the manufacturing side? Do you think there's any changes you've made that you're going to keep, or that you wouldn't have made without the pandemic? You say now you have 6 months of aluminum cans. Do you think that's something that's going to stay going forward, or do you think you're going to get back to that 2 months sometime when things are more normal?
Sure. From a cash flow perspective, having upwards of $100,000 of empty aluminum cans on the floor is not great for a small business. But I really don't see that. I don't see that changing for us. Like I said, I think aluminum shortage is very much a real thing. But in terms of changes, we've shuffled some positions around. We've expanded some roles and responsibilities. And the team we got to incredible. Like I said, some of those long 800 case packaging days were just brutal, and they didn't know if they were going to have work the next day. But in terms of COVID changes, not too much on the manufacturing side. I think we first, probably if there's anything, we forecast better, we plan better. Beer releases and logistics and trucks, getting the diesel down to New Orleans takes a little bit more time and effort these days, and we're sending 2 down a month. And I think anything, just being a lot more thoughtful with planning in advance.
All right. Any special beer release to celebrate the end of the pandemic? Are we going to have a fancy party with I don't know what it would be, but some cool brew that you come up with?
Nothing in the works. We do have a lot of seasonal stuff coming out, but nothing COVID specific. I'm hesitant to even bring it up. It's one of those things where I don't. Hopefully, we're out of the woods with this whole thing, but I definitely don't want to be the person to jinx it and I guess announce victory when we're still got a few things to figure out, and we don't know a ton about it, to be honest, in terms of the health community. But no COVID specific beer. But again, we're just happy to brew.
All right, so that's most of my questions. I'd like to give you, if there's any topic, or if you think I missed something, a chance to speak about that, or if nothing else, tell us about the events coming up at the brewery, or things that you want people to know about, and come out and have some fun at the tasting room.
Yeah, so we've got a lot going on. I think the biggest thing we have coming up this particular week, the week of May 10th to May 11th, all week long is American Craft Beer Week. When folks see this video, I'm sure that will be over. But just to give folks a background, American Craft Beer Week is how we celebrate all the craft breweries in America. It's a small, independent, traditional in terms of what we believe in, how we brew our beer. And it's kind of nice timing to get back and have some new releases with some customers outside the tasting room, on the patio at Frank's, or go downtown to Fatty's and support other independent small businesses. So this whole week we've been celebrating American Craft Beer Week. Coming up at the end of May, we have a pretty massive event that's shaping up to be a huge outdoor kind of a barbecue event with some local, a lot of really good live music. That's called on 29th, it's called the Spring Shindig. We just announced that yesterday. There's a lot of buzz around it. We're bringing some friends over from East Texas to cook us some barbecue. That's going to be a big event for us in the tasting room. We've got releases all summer with Life Itself. The key lime pie is out right now, and we're packaging literally right now on the other side of this wall over here. We're packaging the vanilla peach version, which is exciting to get that out on the shelf in the next couple of weeks. We got a lot of fresh Grace and Grit coming up. Always fresh promotion. A lot of barrel aged stuff this year. We got a fun collab we're working on with Parlo. So Parlow Beer Lab is some friends that have a little neighborhood brewery in the Bywater neighborhood of New Orleans. We're not gonna talk about the beer just yet, but no, it's a collab coming out in about a month. So we're pumped just to see those guys from New Orleans that came up here and brew with us. But yeah, summer's gonna be busy for sure.
Well, great. I really appreciate you taking the time with me this morning. And if you're watching this interview, go grab a beer in the tasting room or grab one at your local restaurant, get it on draft. Either way, you won't be disappointed. So thanks for joining me, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me on and learn a little bit more about Great Raft and our perspective. And like I said, happy to be brewing, and thanks for the support.
All right.